Understanding violations, where property managers get in trouble. As a broker or property manager, one of the fastest ways to get into trouble with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRA, is through violations. These violations are not always intentional. In many cases, they come from lack of systems, poor supervision, or simply not understanding the law. But here's the reality in 2026. ADRA does not care if it was a mistake. Compliance is expected. Violations can lead to audits, fines, disciplinary action under ARS, paragraph 32, 2153, and in serious cases, license suspension or revocation. Understanding where violations come from is the first step in preventing them. Common violations in property management. Property management violations typically fall into patterns. Once you recognize these patterns, you can build systems to avoid them. One of the most common areas is health and safety violations. For example, if a tenant in Phoenix reports mold, broken AC, or exposed wiring and the property manager fails to act, this can quickly turn into a violation of habitability standards under the Arizona Landlord-Tenant Act. Another major category is fair housing violations. If a property manager denies an applicant based on a protected class, or fails to provide reasonable accommodations, such as allowing a service animal, this can result in serious legal consequences. Then we see security deposit violations, which are extremely common. For example, failing to return a deposit within the required time frame or not providing an itemized list of deductions can lead to disputes and penalties. There are also notice violations, such as entering a property without proper notice or failing to provide required notice for lease changes or rent increases. These may seem minor, but they are legally significant. Lease violations and operational mistakes. Many violations come from simply not following the lease agreement. For example, if a property manager agrees in the lease to handle landscaping but fails to do so, that becomes a breach of the lease. Or worse, changing lease terms without proper notice or agreement. These are not just customer service issues, they are compliance issues. Improper evictions, a major risk area. One of the biggest mistakes property managers make is trying to speed up an eviction. Arizona law requires a strict legal process. If a property manager changes locks, shuts off utilities, or removes a tenant's belongings without a court order, this is considered a self-help eviction, which is illegal. For example, a frustrated owner in Glendale might tell a property manager, "Just lock them out." If the property manager follows that instruction, they are the one who will face the violation, not the owner. This is where brokers must lead and protect their clients from making bad decisions. Record-keeping violations, the silent killer. Many brokers think violations only happen from big mistakes, but one of the most common issues is poor record-keeping. Failing to document transactions, maintenance requests, notices, or communication can create serious problems during an audit. If ADRA asks for records and they are incomplete or missing, that alone can result in a violation. In Arizona, records must be maintained for a minimum of 5 years. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. Rent collection and fee violations charging improper fees or mishandling rent payments is another common issue. For example, charging a late fee that is not authorized in the lease or collecting fees inconsistently can create both legal and trust issues. Every dollar collected must be accounted for, documented, and handled according to the agreement. Tenant privacy violations. Respecting tenant privacy is not optional. Entering a property without proper notice, except in emergencies, is a violation. For example, showing a property in Scottsdale without notifying the tenant properly can result in complaints and potential legal action. Professionalism and compliance go hand in hand. The audit process, where everything gets reviewed. When violations occur, or sometimes even randomly, ADRA may initiate an audit. This is where everything gets reviewed, especially trust accounts. Audits are not something to fear if your systems are clean, but they will expose every weakness if they are not. Pre-audit preparation. Getting your house in order. Before an audit, the broker must gather all documentation, including bank statements, ledgers, leases, and receipts. Auditors will also review internal policies to ensure compliance with Arizona law. If your policies are unclear or not followed, that becomes a red flag immediately. Trust account structure. Separation is key. Under ARS, paragraph 32-2174, all property management funds must be held in properly designated trust accounts. These accounts must be separate from the broker's operational funds. For example, you cannot mix rent payments with your business operating account. That is a major violation. Trust accounts exist to protect client funds, and Adri takes this very seriously. Reconciliation. Where errors are found, auditors will review monthly bank reconciliations to ensure that bank balances match internal records and client ledgers. If there are discrepancies, missing funds, incorrect balances, or unexplained transactions, this is where they will be discovered. For example, if your trust account shows $50,000, but your client ledgers only account for $47,000, you have a serious problem. Every dollar must be accounted for. Transaction review. Following the money. Every deposit and withdrawal will be reviewed. Auditors will check that all transactions are supported by proper documentation, such as leases, invoices, and receipts. If you cannot explain where money came from or where it went, that is a violation. Simple as that. Audit trail, your best defense. A clear audit trail is critical. This means every transaction must be traceable from start to finish, with supporting documentation. For example, rent collected, deposited, recorded, dispersed, documented. If any part of that chain is missing, it creates risk. Final audit report. What happens next? At the end of the audit, the auditor will issue a report outlining any findings. If there are issues, corrective actions may be required, and follow-up audits may occur. This is where brokers either pass with confidence or face serious consequences. How this section connects forward. This section is where everything becomes real. Violations are not theoretical. They are what happens when systems fail. Audits are not random. They are how Adri verifies compliance. As we move forward, everything we've learned, from PMEA agreements to landlord-tenant law to trust accounts, comes together into one concept: broker supervision and control. That is where real protection and real risk exists. Online discussion. What is the most common cause of property management violations? Answer: lack of proper systems, supervision, and understanding of legal requirements, rather than intentional wrongdoing. Why are trust accounts heavily audited in property management? Answer: because they hold client funds, and improper handling can lead to financial harm, fraud, and serious regulatory violations. What is the biggest mistake property managers make during evictions? Answer: attempting to bypass the legal process through self-help actions such as changing locks or removing tenants without a court order.